Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. As I saw that he was restrained by fealty to Little Britain from saying as much as he could, and as I knew with thankfulness to him how far out of his way he went to say what he did, I could not press him. But I told him, after a little meditation over the fire, that I would like to ask him a question, subject to his answering or not answering, as he deemed right, and sure that his course would be right. He paused in his breakfast, and crossing his arms, and pinching his shirt sleeves. His notion of indoor comfort was to sit without any coat. He nodded to me once to put my question.
You have heard of a man of bad character whose true name is Compeyson?
He answered with one other nod.
Is he living?
One other nod.
Is he in London?
He gave me one other nod, compressed the post office exceedingly, gave me one last nod, and went on with his breakfast.
Now,
said Wemmick,
questioning being over,
which he emphasized and repeated for my guidance.
I come to what I did. After hearing what I heard, I went to Garden Court to find you. Not finding you, I went to Clarriker's to find Mr. Herbert. And him you found,
said I, with great anxiety.
And him I found. Without mentioning any names or going into details, I gave him to understand that if he was aware of anybody, Tom, Jack, or Richard, being about the chambers or about the immediate neighborhood, while he had better get Tom, Jack, or Richard out of the way while you were out of the way. He would be greatly puzzled what to do.
He was puzzled what to do.
He was puzzled what to do, not the less, because I gave him my opinion that it was not safe to try and get Tom, Jack, or Richard too far out of the way at present. Mr. Pip, I'll tell you something. Under existing circumstances, there is no place like a great city when you are once in it. Don't break cover too soon. Lie close. Wait till things slacken before you try the open, even for foreign air. I thanked him for his valuable advice and asked him what Herbert had done. Mr. Herbert, said Wemmick, after being all of a heap for half an hour, and struck out a plan, he mentioned to me as a secret that he is courting a young lady who has, as no doubt you are aware, bedridden pa, which pa, having been in the pursuer line of life, lies abed in a bow window, where he can see the ships sail up and down the river. You are acquainted with the young lady, most probably. Not personally,
said I. The truth was that she had objected to me as an expensive companion who did Herbert no good, and that, when Herbert first proposed to present me to her, she had received the proposal with such moderate warmth that Herbert had himself obliged to confide the state of the case to me, with a view to the lapse of a little time before I made her acquaintance. When I had begun to advance Herbert's prospects by stealth, I had been able to bear this with cheerful philosophy. He and his affianced, for their part, had not naturally been anxious to introduce a third person into their interviews, and thus I was assured that I had risen in Clara's esteem, and although the young lady and I had long regularly interchanged messages and remembrances by Herbert, I had never seen her. However, I did not trouble Wemmick with these particulars.
The house with the bow window,
said Wemmick,
being by the riverside, down the pool there between the Limehouse and Greenwich, and being kept, it seems, by a very respectable widow, who has a furnished upper floor to let. Mr. Herbert put it to me. What did I think of that as a temporary tenement for Tom, Jack, or Richard? Now, I thought very well of it, for 3 reasons I'll give you. That is to say, firstly, it's altogether out of all your beats, and is well away from the usual heap of streets, great and small. Secondly, without going near it yourself, you could always hear of the safety of Tom, Jack, or Richard through Mr. Herbert. Thirdly, after a while, and it might be prudent, if you should want to slip Tom, Jack, or Richard on board a foreign packet boat, there he is, ready.
Much comforted by these considerations, I thanked Wemmick again and again, and begged him to proceed.
Well, sir,
Mr.
Mr. Herbert threw himself into the business with a will, and by 9 o'clock last night he housed Tom, Jack, or Richard, whichever it may be. You and I don't want to know, quite successfully. At the old lodgings it was understood that he was summoned to Dover, and in fact he was taken down the Dover road and cornered out of it. Now, another great advantage of all this is that it was done without you, and when, if anyone was concerning himself about your movements, you must be known to be ever so many miles off and quite otherwise engaged. This diverts suspicion and confuses it, and for the same reason I recommend that even if you came back last night, you should not go home. You should not go home. It brings in more confusion, and you want confusion.
Wemmick, having finished his breakfast here, looked at his watch and began to get his coat on.
And now, Mr. Pip,
said he, with his hand still in the sleeves,
I have probably done the most I can do, but if I can ever do more, from a Walworth point of view, and in a strictly private and personal capacity, I shall be glad to do it. Here's the address. There can be no harm in your going here tonight, and seeing for yourself that all is well with Tom, Jack, or Richard, before you go home, which is another reason for your not going home last night. But after you have gone home, don't go back here. You are very welcome, I am sure, Mr. Pip.
His hands were now out of his sleeves, and I was shaking them.
And let me finally impress one important point upon you.
He laid his hands upon my shoulders, and added in a solemn whisper,
Avail yourself of this evening to lay hold of his portable property. You don't know what might happen to him. Don't let anything happen to the portable property.
Quite despairing of making my mind clear to Wemmick on this point, I forbore to try.
Time's up, said Wemmick, and I must be off. If you had nothing more pressing to do than to keep here till dark, that's what I should advise. You look very much worried, and it would do you good to have a perfectly quiet day with the aged. He'll be up presently. And a little bit of you. Remember the pig? Of course, said I. Well, and a little bit of him. That sausage you toasted was his, and he was in all respects a first-rate. Do try him, if it is only for old acquaintance' sake. Goodbye, aged parent.
In a cheery shout.
All right, John, all right, my boy,
piped the old man from within. I soon fell asleep before Wemmick's fire, and the aged and I enjoyed one another's society by falling asleep before it more or less all day. We had loin of pork for dinner, and greens grown on the estate, and I nodded at the aged with a good intention whenever I failed to do it drowsily. When it was quite dark, I left the aged preparing the fire for toast, and I inferred from the number of teacups, as well as from his glances as the 2 little doors in the wall, that Mr. Skiffins was expected. We'll go ahead and stop there this week, as it was the end of the chapter. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care. And thanks again.